The advanced filter feature will use more complex criteria when it comes to filtering records within your database than what you learned in the previous training video on simple criteria for the autofilter feature. Of course, we'll keep it simple here so you can get the basics, and then you can go nuts and use more complex criteria for the advanced filter. But before we go ahead and use it, first of all, you need to have your spreadsheets set up. In that, you've got your main database where we have a list of all the homes that we're selling, and then over, in this case to the right, a sub-database or a mini database that contains the same labels or row header that you have over in the main database and the criteria below it. So this person's looking for a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath home. And to set that up, it's really simple. Just go ahead and select the row header that contains the labels in your database, copy it, and then in this case I pasted it over here. You can paste it wherever you want. And then of course be sure to enter in your criteria. Once you have that set up, then come up here, click on the Data tab, go to the Sort and Filter group, and there you go. There's the Advanced Filter feature. You can see in the pop-up it says Options for Filtering Using Complex Criteria. Now before I go ahead and click on it, it's easier if you go ahead and click and select any cell within the database, because when you click on it, if it recognizes the database, it'll select it for you. So you don't have to select it later on here, and we'll get to that in just a second. But first of all in the window, when it comes to filtering, do you want to filter the list in the place that you have your data? Or do you want to copy that to another location and leave the database alone? We'll do both, so we'll leave it as is. And then down below it says, okay, where's the list or your database? And you can see it's got it selected. If it doesn't, go ahead and click on the collapsible dialog box button and then click and drag to select the database. Make sure you include the labels for each column, because it's going to compare the labels in this database to the sub-database to keep it on track. So for the criteria here, it needs to go, oh, bedrooms, bedrooms. I'll look down for 3. Let me go ahead and hit the Enter key on the keyboard to pop it back open. So there's the database that we're looking in, and here's the criteria for that database. Let me delete it. Click on the collapsible dialog box button and select the labels for the mini database, and then also the row below, just one row that contains the criteria. Even if you have no criteria below it, just select the one row below. If you try to do 2 or 3, well, you may run into issues, and that's something we'll cover later on here. But for right now, we'll keep it simple. Hit Enter, pop open the window, and then the unique records only means that if there's duplicates, just show me one. I don't need to see all of them. But since we're not going to have duplicates here for homes that are for sale, let's leave it as is. Click Okie dokie, and there you go. Let me go ahead and scroll over. It filtered it in place, and you can see over on the row headers there that it starts off at 1 and then it skips to 15, 16, and then hides everything else that doesn't meet the conditions that were set over here. And because it filtered in place or on the same lines that I had for my mini database, well, we don't see the criteria there. So I'm thinking instead of doing it this way where it filters the list in place, let's get the results in another place. So to go ahead and undo this, if we don't have the undo button, just come up here to the same group, sort and filter, and say clear, and we're back to where we started. So let's go ahead and do it again. Click Advanced, and then say this time we want to copy the results to another location, and down below this opens up and it says, okay, where's that location? I can go ahead and delete it, and you can click on the collapsible dialog box button if you want, or as long as the cursor's flashing in it, if you go ahead and I'll select that cell right there, that works. Go ahead and click Okie dokie, and there you go. Leaves this alone. I can see the criteria up above, and I can match it down below and go, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, 3, good. Okay, 2.5, oh, excellent. And like I said, you can make this more complex. Like instead of 2.5 baths, we can do the list price. We want it something, we're looking in the neighborhood that's greater than 200,000 with a 3-bedroom. And then let's go ahead and do it again. Advanced filter. You're going to have to reselect copy to another location, because that always defaults to filter the list in place. And then go ahead and click Okie dokie, and there we go. So of the ones that are available, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. It returned only 3. All right, how about we want double? We want maybe 3 bedrooms and 5 bedrooms. And just look at the list of those two there. Well, let's go ahead and clear this out. Let's type in 5. Now remember, for the criteria, it was just the labels and the row below it. We now have to include the second row, so let's go ahead and click on Advanced. I'm going to go ahead and select Copy to another location. Criteria range has now changed, and we need to click on the collapsible button, click and drag to select the extra row down below, hit enter, click okie dokie, and there's 3 and 5 bedrooms. Now, if you clear the bottom row of any criteria and you go, oh, let's just go for 3 bedrooms, and you click on advanced and you copy to another location, click okie dokie, it doesn't like it. So it returns everything, saying, oh, well, we got nothing in here, so I guess that means everything. Keep that in mind so you don't get results that you're not looking for. So let's go ahead and click and drag to select it and delete the results and scroll back up. Let's go back to 2.5 baths to keep it simple. And go ahead and scroll back. And to automate this a bit more, we can use what are called macros. In other words, it's kind of annoying for me to come up here every time, click on advance, copy to another location, and click OK. Instead, how about if I go ahead and record those steps and place them into buttons? Now that's what a macro is basically, is that it records your steps you can quickly execute in a single click. Well, in this case it's going to be a single click by clicking on a button. You can use shortcut keys to execute the macro, and we're going to be covering macros later on, but I feel it's important right now, at least in this training video, to show you this, because if you're going to use this, it could be quite tedious if you don't have a little bit of help. So I'll keep it simple, and then to learn more about macros, you want to watch my macros training video. So this is what you're going to do. We want to go ahead and start recording what we typically do, those steps that says look at the criteria here and filter, but copy the results over into this location. So to record those steps, we need to turn on the recorder. We can come up here and click on the Developer tab and go to the Code group, and there it is, Record Macro. Or if you don't have the Developer tab up, you can go to the View tab, go to the Macros group, click on the Macros drop-down arrow and record. How do you bring up the Developer tab? Well, you right-click anywhere on the ribbon, you go to Customize the ribbon, and you come down here and you check Developer, because by default it's not checked and it's not showing. Let me click Cancel. So let's use Developer since the record is right there and I don't have to click on a button to start recording. In fact, you can even come down here and right-click on the status bar and check Macro Recording, and you can see that it's right there. Because if I uncheck it, it disappears. Let me go ahead and check it so it's right there for me to click on to start recording. So let's click on it, and it says, okay, what's the name of the macro that we're recording? We're going to say filter. And down below you can assign a shortcut key and say, let's do Q. So when I do Control Q, it's automatically going to execute all the steps that you're going to see here in a blink of an eye. And you want to store this in this workbook. Again, this is stuff that we're going to be covering in a later training video and go over the basics of macros, but right off the bat you can see that you can store it in this workbook, a new workbook, or a personal macro workbook, and then the description. You can go ahead and type in the description. In any case, when you're done, go ahead and click okie dokie, and it's recording. Now it's not recording times, it's recording steps or actions. And down below you can see that the stop button is available. It says a macro is currently recording. Just click stop when you're done executing all the steps. And so if I move my mouse around, like I said, it's not recording time. So the first thing we want to do is to go ahead and click anywhere within the database, then come up here and click on the Data tab and click on Advanced. And we want to copy the results to another location. In the list range, let's go ahead and delete that and click on the collapsible dialog box button and click and drag to select our range, hit enter to pop it back open. Remember, it's recording all the steps that we're executing here. In the criteria, let's delete that, collapse it, select our range here, hit enter, and we want to copy to, let's delete it, and just select the cell right here. Let's do I6. And then click okie dokie. When we're done, click stop, and that's it. Just go ahead and delete the range there. And to execute the macro, remember the shortcut key was Control Q, Control Q. Ooh, that's so fun. And it always goes over to the same cell that we selected here, which that's fine. You'll learn more about macros. We don't have to go to that cell. We can just start recording without going into the database. You can go ahead and delete that. And let's try it if we just did 3 bedrooms. Control Q. Hey, there we go. Isn't that fun? And then how about if we have a macro that instead of me busting my hump and selecting the range here and deleting it every time, that it automatically deletes that range. Now I have to keep in mind that if I get the results that equals the same range here, which is what, about 24 right here. Then when I record the steps to delete a range, I want to go down to about 24. And just to be safe, I can go down further. So let's go ahead and record that. Just come down here, click on record, and we'll say this is delete. And you can use a shortcut. I'm not. Let's click okie dokie. And then we'll click in this cell and go over, and we'll go down, down, down. Oh, okay, we went too far, but hit the delete key on the keyboard. And then when we're done, I'll place the selection right back in cell I6, and then click on stop, and that's it. So Control Q, and then if I had a shortcut, whatever shortcut keys are available, I could have it automatically cleared. But since I didn't do a shortcut key, then to go ahead and use the macro, I can do one of two other things. I can either come up here on the View tab, go to the Macros group, click on the drop-down arrow, and say View them. And there's the delete. Click on Run, and it deletes it. You also have it on the Developer tab where you can look at the macros and filter, run, delete, run. Or what you can do is you can insert two buttons here. You click on one to filter, you click on the other to delete. So we create the buttons, we assign the macros to the buttons so we can really pop through our advanced filter without having to do it manually every time by going through all those steps. So with the Developer tab open, we want to go to the Controls group, click on the Insert drop-down arrow, and choose the Form Control, the button. Click on it, and then you can see when I move my mouse around, we got a plus sign. Go ahead and click and drag, so it's about. Then after I drag it about yay big, it says, okay, assign a macro to this button. Oh, that's nice. I don't have to go out and assign it. It'll open up a window. Let's do the filter. Click okie dokie, and there it is. That's button 1. Okay, well that doesn't make sense to me. Let's go ahead and, with it selected, change the name. If I accidentally click outside of it and I hover over it, if I click on it, it's going to execute it. How do I go ahead and click on it to get inside the button to change the text? Well, you can right click on it and then go ahead and click on the border. And once you do that, it's in edit mode. So I can go ahead and click inside the button and change the text and say, in fact, you can even format it if you want. Let's go to the Home tab, change the size, or let me click off. Again, you can right click on it to reselect it and then go down to Format Control. And let's choose color red. Let's do bold. Okie dokie. Oh, that looks better. Okay, we'll do the same thing for clearing it. Let's add a button down below by going to the Developer tab, insert another button, click and drag. What macro do we want to assign? Delete. Okie dokie. And then in here, we'll say, and click off, and there we go. Clear, filter, before, after, before, after. And we can go ahead and do 2 bedrooms with anything greater than 2 baths. Let's go ahead and filter. Isn't that fancy? And then of course to go ahead and get rid of all this if you want, just right click, and when you see the lines around it, the resizing handles, which by the way you can go ahead and click and drag on those resizing handles. I'm going to go ahead with the resizing handles around it, hit the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of it, right click on the border, go ahead and click on the border, hit the delete key, and they're gone. Of course the macros aren't gone. To get rid of those, we can go over this in more depth in the macros training video, but if you're aching right now, then go ahead and click on macros, brings up the window, and in case if you missed it because we were going through it and focusing on running it or assigning it, you got the delete option there. And then one last thing that you learn in the macros, that when you save your workbook that contains a macro, you can't save it normally, as you can see up here with the extension .xlsx, because when you click on save, it says, no, this contains macros, and in order to save this, you got to convert this into a macro workbook. And the reason why Excel does that is because with macros, you can create a code, if you know how to create codes, that when you send it to somebody, they can really wreak havoc on your computer. So as a security measure, you either have to have an Excel workbook that is macro free, or if you want one that contains macros, at least those who receive a workbook from you can identify and say, hey, wait a second, because that's a macro workbook, I'm not sure if I trust it and want to open it. Because before, you could save macros in the same file and not convert it to a different file format. So when you opened it up, you were caught off guard and you're like, oh, there's macros in here, and oh, it destroyed my computer. Again, it's for people using macros for nefarious reasons to destroy your computer. So to save a file with these features, click No, and then choose a macro-enabled file type in the file type list. So we'll say No, and then it opens up, click on the Save as Type drop-down arrow, and there you go, macro-enabled workbook. And you can see the extension is different. It's got an M instead of the last extension X. And if you want to know more about extensions, then I recommend that you watch my Windows training video on extensions. In any case, there you go. Select it and click Save. And it's happy. And you can see up in the title bar, XLS, not the X, but the M for macro. And then, by the way, if somebody sends you this file, it's going to look different than all the other Excel files. Let me show you. Let me minimize this down to the taskbar and open up the exercises folder on my desktop because that's where I saved it into. Double click. And there you go. Well, okay. Can you see the difference? Okay, it's too small. Let me go ahead and click on the drop down arrow and say we want to see medium icons. And there you go. You see the extension M, and then you can see that, hey, which one of these is not like the other? This one doesn't look like that one, and that one's got the regular extension on it. Let me move my mouse out of the way. The basic X, and this one's got, well, an exclamation point as part of the icon to let you know that that's the symbol for macro. So if you don't have extensions turned on your Windows computer, that you can't see the extension here, then look at the icon and make sure you don't see an exclamation point. Because if you do, and somebody says, "Psst, here, go ahead and open this," and you don't know who that person is or who sent it to you, don't do it. It could contain code that could really do damage to your computer. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.